Welcome back to Nurturing Humboldt. I'm your host, Karina Vasquez. Before we begin, I wanted to give a gentle note for listeners. Today's conversation includes discussions of domestic violence, so please take care of yourself while listening and step away if you need to. At First Life Humboldt, we know that families thrive when communities come together to create safety, healing, and support. But we also know that some topics, like domestic violence, can feel really hard to talk about. Still, it's vital that we do, because behind the silence, real families and children are being impacted. That's why we're so honored to be joined today by Liz Rockenbach and Jess Aguirre, two incredible bilingual client advocates for Humboldt Domestic Violence Services. Their team walks alongside survivors, offering safety, resources, and compassionate support, while also working to break the cycle of violence in our community. Whether you're a parent, a caregiver, service provider, or just someone who cares about your community, this conversation offers insight into how we can all play a role in supporting survivors and building a culture of care. It also lets us into the world of HDVS and their services. If you or someone you know is experiencing violence, please know that you are not alone. Confidential support is available 24/7 through HDVS at 707-443-6042. Let's go ahead and hear from Liz and Jess. So thank you guys for joining me. I think this conversation is really important and maybe a really difficult one for folks. I have Jessica here and Liz from Humboldt Domestic Violence Services are here as bilingual client advocates to share their knowledge, their stories, and a little bit more about HDVS. Can we say hello, Jessica and Liz? Do you guys want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then maybe your role here in the community.
Yeah, so my name is Jessica Aguirre. Like Karina mentioned, I'm a bilingual client advocate. So I serve to educate and advocate for survivors here in the community.
So hello, my name is Elizabeth Rockenbach. I am also a bilingual advocate here at HDVS, and my favorite role is to empower survivors throughout their difficult experience. Our whole mission of HDVS is to break the cycle of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and trafficking through services, education, and advocacy. Our vision is the elimination of domestic and intimate partner violence.
Thank you guys. And thank you for the work you do. I know it's not an easy role and it requires a lot of training and a lot of emotional labor. So thank you for how you guys show up. I think we can take this conversation in many different ways. And I think it'd be important for us to center it thinking about the podcast and who listens, both for maybe somebody who may be experiencing DV or maybe just is a little bit more curious about the services that you guys offer or about that world, and also for service providers who sometimes face maybe families or clients that they're working with and they want to know how they can support them better. So that's how we're going to break up the conversation today. And I think a great way to start is defining domestic violence. Domestic violence can look like many different things. So how would you guys describe domestic violence, and what are some different forms it can take beyond physical harm?
Yeah, so a pretty clear definition of domestic violence is a set of behaviors that is typically used by one partner against a romantic partner to maintain power and control. And a lot of those behaviors tend to be violent or aggressive. Yeah, and I think Liz can talk about a little bit more of what different forms that can manifest in.
Yeah, so we can have some forms manifesting into psychological abuse, which that looks like constant criticism, name-calling, belittling, and even gaslighting, where the victim doubts their own sanity or perception of things. It can also manifest into verbal abuse, which that one looks like yelling, screaming, insulting, or degrading language. Another form can be financial abuse, where they're controlling all their money and financial decisions, withholding bank account access, or even employment, forcing financial dependence, sabotaging work or even education at times. And it can also manifest in very intense sexual abuse, which, consensual sexual activity, pressure to engage, or manipulation to engage, withholding intimacy as a form of punishment or control. Can be also social isolation abuse, where they isolate the victim from friends or family so they can have no support to go to besides the abuser. Even digital abuse, like stalking, tracking, harassing through phone calls, texts, social media, demanding for passwords or monitoring their private accounts. A really intense form too is a spiritual abuse, where they use religion or cultural traditions of beliefs to justify what they're doing to their partner, or even preventing the victim from practicing their own beliefs or forcing them to practice certain beliefs that they believe in. Another one that happens like most frequently during post-separation is legal abuse, where they manipulate the legal system to harass and threaten and to gain control over the victim and to mentally and financially drain them throughout this process, just to maintain that
Power and control.
Yeah. And even using their immigration status against them as well can even come out too.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, and I know that they can all kind of be happening at the same time. They can be maybe alternating. Maybe there's periods of time in a relationship where things are good, and then maybe you'll start seeing those things kind of weave together and come out to the surface. I think it's so important to name the abuse too, because I think maybe if you're listening and you're thinking, maybe something is resonating with you, I think it's always good to have language to back it, because now you know, right? And that brings back some power for you. Now, I wanted to ask how you guys find domestic violence shows up differently for different genders, because oftentimes DV gets painted in one way, but we know DV can happen to anybody. Do you guys have anything to say to that?
It's found to have higher rates for women to experience domestic abuse. There's also found to have where they have more resources out there for them. And it's in the fear that comes up is like fear of their partner retaliating, so that's why they maintain themselves in this relationship, or concern for their child's protection. And maybe they even develop some type of financial dependency on them, where it's not easy for them to just leave right then and there. And for men, it's found to be very stigmatized, where they have to own up to it, and they're very often dismissed of their experience, and have less resources out there to reach out to, where they can believe their experience as well. And for members of like the LGBTQ community, they have also limited resources and experience a lot of discrimination and threats to like the abuser to out them to the public when they're not ready, any phobia to maintain this control over them as well.
Thank you for that. Yeah, when you're talking about power and abuse, I think it really puts it into perspective that anybody could be causing that harm when they have those intentions, conscious or unconscious. Now, for all of us to know, are there some signs of an unhealthy or abusive relationship that people might not immediately recognize?
Yeah, so there's a few like red flags that, people can definitely look out for. It could be controlling behavior right off the jump. Isolating, name calling, insulting or shaming their partner, as well as obsessive behavior, like needing constant communication, check-ins. Definitely love bombing, like with withdrawing the love or showcasing it in large amounts and not knowing necessarily how to navigate that. Are there any that you'd like to include, Liz?
Yeah, maybe like a feeling of walking on eggshells throughout your relationship and not feeling 100% comfortable or even safe. Avoiding certain language or actions to not set them off, because you're getting used to the cycle that reoccurs, and they kind of know the tolerance between it, and then they try to protect themselves by being careful what they say or do, because of the unpredictable like reactions or mood swings that they might have, the abuser. Excess jealousy or protectiveness, questioning where they are, who they're with, using "I just care about you" when when it's in the form to just control them. Maybe conditional love, like whenever the victim does whatever the abuser wants them to do, then they get rewarded with affection or love.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, in terms of using like, these are red flags to keep an eye out for. And especially for maybe people who have maybe grown up seeing some of these patterns in their households. And so it's hard for them to separate it from what a relationship should look like to what it has looked like. But you should always feel comfortable in your relationship and safe. And so if you see that there's some of these warning signs in your relationship or somebody that you love, it's just something to consider, right? Because things can escalate. And I know that guilt and fear often play a huge role in someone's experiences of abuse. What would you want someone struggling with those feelings to hear?
I would definitely like, to remind survivors that what happened to them is not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
No one is deserving of being hurt or controlled. Having, your self-autonomy is something that is super valued. Definitely reminding yourself that you're your own person. Yeah.
Also, just reminding them that healing is possible and they are not alone throughout this process as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So as client advocates for HDVS, what are the first steps someone could take to feel more safe and more supported?
Yeah. Definitely having a really solid support system. I think it's very important, having somebody you can trust, someone you can depend on, and when situations get a little too dangerous. Um, a lot of like one of my main things that I like to always like instill within the clients is like having financial independency.
Mhm.
So being able to like stash away a savings account or even collecting gift cards that can help you get out of your situation, creating a safety plan
Mhm.
checklist where you can either, mark off ways to stay safe, like packing a getaway bag, having safe numbers around, changing locks, or even filing a restraining order. Those are definitely some steps to keep yourself safe. As well as reaching out to a trusted service provider. It could be your doctor, a therapist, a social worker, a domestic violence hotline, like somebody that knows what's going on in your situation.
Thank you, Jessica. That's
And the other thing I'd like to add, while just having some steps to prepare, is even protecting your mind and emotions by privately even journaling them, and some grounding exercises that the survivor can practice on their own as well, and just building support quietly so the abuser can't find out and control that.
looking into yourself is really speaking to me because I think sometimes we often can let our mind take us everywhere. And if we're able to write down like, well, what am I actually feeling? And maybe looking at it in that way are kind of great first steps. And planning is key. At First Five, we often talk about planning in all sorts of ways, whether it's dealing around your immigration safety, immigration status, or earthquake safety if there's a natural disaster. So planning is so key, and it's helping us be prepared for a moment, right? And so with DV, this is just another tool that we can do. Start slow, but yeah, definitely starting a plan. Now, if somebody doesn't know about HDVS, has never heard of Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, or they don't really know what you guys offer, can you walk us through what happens if someone reaches out to HDVS, if they call? What support is available for both adults and children?
Yeah, so we definitely have a lot of services that we provide to our clients. Essentially, to become a client of ours, you have to, have been experiencing some form of intimate partner violence. And once you reach out to us, we kind of have like a session over the phone, kind of determine where you're at then we go ahead and do an intake over the phone in that moment and set up an appointment where we can meet one-on-one with this individual and establish like a grounding relationship with them. And once we're in that appointment, we can move forward with whatever their needs are. So if it's a one-on-one, just counseling session, a peer counseling session, we can move forward with that. It could be legal assistance where they need assistance filing a restraining order, support groups as well to aid with that healing, resources and referrals. And emergency sheltering.
Mm-hmm.
It's another big one we do.
Yeah, so if somebody is like ready to leave but doesn't have a place to go, that's something that you guys could potentially facilitate help with.
Yeah, depending on our space and availability, definitely that's something we can always talk about.
Yeah. And if somebody calls and maybe they're just needing maybe to vent in that moment, but maybe they're not necessarily like ready to meet one-on-one, is that something that you guys can do? Like just maybe sit with them in that conversation, or is there another resource for that?
Yeah, definitely we do provide that space over the phone. We have that 24-hour support line. So whenever, even in the moment at 3 a.m, they need somebody to vent to out of it, regrounding them, we have that support available to them. And it's probably most recommended when just like getting that conversation out, just taking that step to even talk about it, even though you're not getting established yet for a full term.
Yeah. I feel like we know that there's like national hotlines for folks to call, but I think it feels so reassuring that there's like a local line of local people, one that know the area and can understand maybe different barriers in another way. Like, well, okay, here locally, we understand this might be another barrier on top of this, so that there is somebody available to call is so great. And 24 hours. So anytime. If there's a service provider who maybe suspects somebody is experiencing DV, can they call and make a referral, or does it have to be like the person themselves?
Service providers are always welcome, to give our support line a call. A lot of the times it does provide some emotional support to that client, having somebody by their side. So definitely we always accept calls from service providers, medical providers, law enforcement. We definitely respond to those as well.
Now, I know that one fear that I've heard is that people can feel afraid to make an initial call because they're afraid of what happens. So they're afraid that maybe CPS is going to get involved, or there's a child, or the cops, or it's gonna lead to something. Do you guys have any kind of like reassurance around that?
Yeah. So one of our main things we operate off of is confidentiality based on VAWA, which is Violence Against Women's Act. On that, there is laws here in California that state, confidentiality is something we need to instill within our practices. So when we have instances where they don't want certain providers to know about what they're going through in their home, like we definitely honor that. However, we are also mandated reporters. So if we do see any form of like child abuse that is going on, we are very transparent with our clients that we are mandated reporters, so they know essentially like what they tell us. If it's passing or crossing a certain line, then we would have to report.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I heard you guys say too that you can offer legal support. So being that advocate by their side, whether it's filling out a restraining order, what other forms of advocacy in that legal realm do you guys offer? What does it look like?
Yeah, we provide support with the restraining order. Sometimes we also help get other documents printed out, like a civil harassment order as well, or sometimes with custody questions we provide that. We also provide accompaniment to social services or even court as
awesome.
We always emphasize, we're not legal experts. We didn't go to law school. So all of our knowledge comes from experiences that we've had with clients in the past. So when it comes to legal questions, we're always very limited. However, we will always try to get down to the root of the question to try to help out with whatever they need in that moment.
Yeah. And, I think when we talked earlier, like how having a support system is so key, this is a form of support system. Even just having someone, like you guys mentioned, like showing up to legal appointments or, to court with you, knowing that the intimidation may be lessened if you have someone there by your side who is 100% there for you and sees you. That's
Definitely.
beautiful.
Yeah, the court system can be a very cold, isolating place, like how you mentioned. So it's really scary. So having somebody by your side is always really, nice.
Yeah. Okay, so for anybody who wants to be supportive and maybe doesn't really know or feels a little limited in how they can show up, what are some common pitfalls to avoid, and what are the best ways to show up for someone experiencing DV?
I think like a really big step would be initiating those hard conversations. I know a lot of the time there's a lot of shame and stigma behind being in a domestic violence relationship. So even just initiating those conversations is really important. Just to let them know that you see and hear them. Another thing I would like to say is letting go of expectations of what you believe a survivor or a victim is supposed to do in their situation. A lot of the times they're told, just to leave or to walk away. But a lot of the times, as we mentioned earlier, they could be stopped financially, legally, or they have children. So letting go of what your personal bias is going on the survivor's end.
Yeah. Did you want to add, Liz?
Yeah, allowing them to share their story without judgment is a really good one, and helping them with any other practical needs, like if they need a ride to somewhere, just providing that level of support to gain their trust and openness to speak about their experience. Things to avoid is pressuring them to immediately leave the relationship or speaking badly about their partner, because in the survivor's eyes, they're not viewing it as a certain way that that if people are saying that, they're labeling them, to just avoid labeling behaviors and not minimizing their experience or going away once they withdraw. Like if they go back to their abuser, don't withdraw from them, stay there to support.
That's really beautiful reminders for all of us in community, especially letting go of expectations and our own personal biases, because just because we decide or come to the conclusion that a situation should be handled one way, we all live in our own realities and are experiencing so many complex things. So being supportive and being a friend and being in community means allowing somebody to be with you and in community with you how they can and how they can show up. And I know that for folks, sometimes a feeling of frustration comes up when they see somebody that they love getting hurt in whatever way. They feel frustrated because to them it's like, well, leave, I love you, I see you. And I think a great reminder is to turn that frustration into even more power in the relationship and saying, I'm here, I see you, I'm here, I'm going to be here, whether whatever happens, I'm here. So thank you for those reminders. On how to initiate those conversations, do you guys have any tips on that? Because it can feel pretty challenging to tell somebody, I think this might be happening. So are there any ways to initiate those conversations?
Definitely. I always like to emphasize, that everybody has self-autonomy. Sometimes when we're in these form of relationships, we forget. And that's the purpose, the whole goal of the abuser is to forget that you're your own person. And so I think reminding, the person who's experiencing this is that you're your own person. You have self-autonomy. I think is very important with initiating anything. Essentially, reminding them they have their own voice, they have their own beliefs, they have their own likes, dislikes. They're a person as a whole. I think sometimes reminding people they're not skeletons is really important.
Beautiful. Do you want to add anything, Liz?
Just checking in with your friends or family if you notice a sudden change in their habits or they don't show interest in their hobbies anymore, just like checking in that way. Like, I've noticed, like, maybe you've gotten this relationship with this person. I noticed a sudden change. How are you doing? How is this relationship growing? And if you're liking it, do you feel safe? Just asking, checking in, and seeing if they're willing to even talk about it.
So what I'm getting is that it's better to offer space for self-reflection and to put the power back on them instead of going to, hey, I think this person sucks and I think they treat you terrible, because that's probably going to have the opposite effect, right? Like the retrieval.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. So shifting the conversation back to allow someone to have that moment of self-reflection. So like you mentioned, Liz, yeah, how is this relationship going? Or, you have power, like you see those things. And we all know our friends and we know our people. And if it's somebody that you don't know, I think leaning on the things that you do know makes sense. So, yeah, like what do you like to do, or kind of that power. Do you guys have any tips if there's children in the home who are witnessing violence? How can adults talk to them in a way that feels age appropriate and safe, whether it's an adult in that same household or maybe somebody that they trust?
Yeah, many times I'd say children are weaponized when it comes to a relationship that is going through or is experiencing domestic violence. I think it's really important to recognize that children understand much more what they're giving credit for. So I would say, like, ask them, if old enough, to communicate what they heard or seen. Help them understand that what is going on is not at all their fault. And it's not their job to fix it. That's really important because in moments like this specifically, children at times, have to take the role of protecting their mother or father, protecting everybody else when their only job is to be a child. So definitely, recognizing that children they know a lot more than people give them credit for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, just validating their feelings and reassuring their safety, that the adults are working on establishing that safety, and to just, checking in on them, and maybe even offering them like a therapy session if old enough, like if they need to vent about things that they can't to their parents.
I wanted to ask, just how do you bring up the topic of domestic violence in a way that feels, or I don't know, do you have advice around it? Because, in my team, we were talking about different spaces that we're in where it feels like a conversation needs to be brought up. But I think people just have this association with DV looks like hitting, looks like maybe punching. And so I don't want to say, is this person punching you? Or is this,
Yeah.
but you need to have a conversation. So, yeah.
For me, so I really do like asking, if this person feels safe around their partner. Not just physically, but like, are their thoughts being also nurtured, or are their thoughts being, constantly pushed down, or whatever the case is. But definitely, like, safety is always like one of mine. Like, do you feel safe? Having conversations, having like personal inner like monologues with this person. Like, safety has always been like one of my biggest initiations within these conversations. It's are your children safe around this person? Like, can you walk away for like 2 minutes and you're still gonna be safe? Like,
do you guys have any like recommendations for like stories around this that can maybe spark that self-reflection, whether it's like a movie or like a book that maybe gets you thinking about these things, or maybe even if it's like a family dynamic kind of book where it helps explain to the kids they're going through?
I have a Netflix show.
Oh, yeah.
But it is a little, like, I don't want to say traumatizing, but it could be maybe dramatized. But when I was watching it, I did see a lot of parallels of like the work that we do, and even like the pitfalls of it sometimes. I think it's called Made.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really good,
Yeah, right?
I mean, show. It's really good. It really clearly depicts a story of like a single mother. And just, it starts off with her starting off on like $0 in her car, getting fleeing from the relationship and with her baby, and just how she managed to get up from then. It really did show the empowerment throughout there, and then depicts the abuse that she was experiencing with the partner and how it comes back, and it's not that easy.
The show does a good job about showing domestic violence in other ways that we talked about. So it doesn't always, and I think they say it there in one of the scenes, like, well, I'm not getting hit.
Right.
And they say, well, that's, oh, yeah, that doesn't mean you're not experiencing some form of violence. So
The survivor kind of minimizes their own experience as well. So with that, with their own self-reflection of just reflecting on what safety means to them, what does that look like? How is their body responding to their relationship? Are they in fight or flight, or they're constantly trying to fawn this, be friends with this person just to feel safe? Like, what type of accommodations are you making yourself just to fit their relationship?
Yeah, I was talking to one of my colleagues before the interview, and we were talking about this conversation comes up, I think, all the time here in Humboldt, where we tend to stay on the, well, there's limited resources, there's limited this, it feels like there's not enough. And I think one of the comments I made is it's just speaking very loudly, especially now, is what if we put the power back on an individual and we say, but what about you? Like, what brings you joy outside of services and resources? That's such a good way to start. And I'm the biggest advocate of play. I talk about it all the time, but like, what does play and joy look like to you? And I think it's such a beautiful reminder for all of us that we live in an incredibly unique place where there's opportunities to play all the time and to find joy. I know you guys are doing a healing arts workshop too coming up. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Yes. It'll be located at the Eureka Women's Club on 1531 J Street, Eureka, specifically on September 13th and the 14th. The 13th, there'll be from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and the 14th, will be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you can always call the support line for more information if you want to sign up for it. You'll probably see flyers around the community with the QR code. You can just scan it and RSVP to register.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, safe place to express yourself with a group of people that are willing to express themselves too. It's a really good experience. I believe I was joined it last year, and I did my own little self-expression piece, and I still hold on to it this day, and it's really beautiful. Do recommend to take some time away from your daily day-to-day to just, practice some art therapy.
Yeah.
Like play.
Is this for like just anybody that wants to experience some art therapy, or is this specific for survivors, or how this is just open to the general community?
It's definitely open to the general community. It specifically is going to be connecting with 4 archetypes. So definitely more like tarot vibes, manifestation through art, poetry, and movement. So that would be really cool. But it is open to the public. However, definitely prioritizing survivors, but open to everyone.
We all have something to heal from.
Exactly.
Do you guys have any message of validation or encouragement that you want to share?
I'd like to say that, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. It's, you're not committing a crime to receive any form of help. We want to be in community. We want to support each other, and then when it's anybody else's moment, if it's my moment to need support, I would hope to have like a support system to be able to have, that care and protection, so it's always nice to let yourself also, be taken care of.
You do not deserve to be controlled, hurt, or made to feel small. You are not alone. There are people here to support and believe you. We're here to walk alongside you whenever you are ready. Your choices and safety matters.
For anyone listening interested in Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, I think a key thing to know is that the people behind the phone, answering the phone line, are kind, They are informed and they're there to support, not to judge, and not to sway you to do anything. It's to inform you about the facts about yourself and to empower you, which is the key. These conversations are challenging and they're difficult, but they are so incredibly important. So I want to thank you, Jessica and Liz, Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, bilingual client advocates, which we didn't even mention, but you guys speak Spanish. So the services are available in both English and Spanish.
Yes.
Right. Awesome. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to Liz and Jess from HDVS and all their team for all of the work they do and for our conversation today, sharing their expertise and compassion. Their work reminds us that breaking the cycle of violence is a community effort and that every small act of support can make a real difference in the lives of survivors and families. If today's conversation resonated with you, there are so many ways to support HDVS, whether through volunteering, donating, or simply sharing their resources with someone who may need them. And to anyone listening who may be experiencing violence, please know that you're not alone. Again, confidential support is available 24/7 through HDVS at 707-443-6042. Together, by showing up for each other, we can build a community where safety, care, and liberation is possible for everyone.